What's going on, Beamer Bros? Thank you for joining us once again. This here is an M30 head, and as far as I know, you guys have always been asking, hey, how do we rebuild this thing and where do I start? Let me tell you, I just learned how to do it, so I'm gonna show you how I learned how to do it. So let's get started. So by this point, you have it down to what this looks like here. Manifolds are off. The valve train exposed. This oil line was sitting on top, right? It's got two bolts that go through here. And don't lose these bolts. They're not regular bolts. I gotta tell you that they're kind of just banjo bolts. So they have a hollow opening on the end and they have fittings, or I'm sorry, openings on the sides. So oil can run through it. So this simply unbolts, make sure the head bolts came out too so you can remove it. So now you have an exposed valve train. So at this point, what you're gonna need to do is remove this front nut, and the size of this is a 41. So the 41 fits on there snug. That's if it's not marred like this one is, but it'll fit on there just like that. And you're gonna wanna use a 1/2 inch impact. In this case, I have to use a 3/4 to 1/2 inch adapter. And we're gonna take this thing out. Just like that. So now that you have the nut taken out, you can take out the flange. So let me tell you right now, don't get rid of the nut and don't lose it, because you're gonna need it a little later so you can turn the cam. The whole reason why we're removing this is that so we can remove the cam and take the valve train apart. You can't really take it apart with the cam in there or with anything else installed. We'll show you the next steps in just a few, but you'll understand what I'm saying. Just stay with me, trust me, it'll start to make sense. All right guys, at this point you've taken the nut off, right? So we have to take this flange out. And what this flange is, if you guys don't know already, or if you plan to do this and aren't at this point yet, this flange holds the sprocket that basically allows it to be timed with the crank. So it is pressure set in here to a degree. It's not very tight, but we're just gonna use this 2-jaw puller to get it out, all right? It shouldn't be that bad. All right, see? Wasn't too bad.
Are there any markings that they should be concerned about?
So what you want to pay attention to is this key that lines up with the cam. But you do want to be careful, because this key right here, it actually comes out. It'll pop out. So this one's not popping out right now, but just keep an eye on it, because you don't want to lose it. Because then you'll have no reference point and you won't time it right, and you'll end up with a broken head.
You mean like the one that you just took apart?
Yeah, trust me. There's a story as to why we're doing this, and I'll let you know in just a second when we get to the valves. So at this point, we're gonna remove this, it's a retainer for the cam. I don't know the exact name for it, but that's exactly what it does. So it's a 10mm on both sides. It shouldn't be that hard to get off. And again, don't lose the hardware, you're gonna reuse it.
I heard that's called a turkey collar. Is it true?
We can call it a turkey collar. That's totally fine. All right, so now that we are done with the front end of the head, we're gonna go ahead and move along to the rockers. So as you can tell here, I've got some that move back and forth, and that's because I've removed some of the retainers already. So if we go to, let's see, let's move to this one here. This is a good example. So right here, you see there's a ring. It's a retainer ring. So this retainer ring is gonna stop the rocker from going any further than that. So what we're gonna do is just push them off, just like that, and you see now the rocker's free. So this is gonna allow you to move the shafts out of the head, and when you do that, you're able to remove the entire valve train, relieving the stress off the cam. So from that point, you're able to take the valve train out and remove the cam. All right, so at this point, guys, we have our 41mm socket again, and the nut that you removed from the front in the beginning of the video. So we're gonna reinstall this, but we're not gonna tighten that much. All we're gonna do is reinstall it so we can turn the cam and free up tension off the rockers that we need to basically remove. So we're gonna just do it with a ratchet. We don't need that much force to turn the head, or to turn the cam. So we're just gonna verify that we have removed tension. All right, so as we move along and remove the retaining clips from the rockers, I might have mentioned this already, but it's a good idea to make sure that all the eccentric nuts are loose so that the eccentrics move freely. This allows you to have the most slack on the rockers and safely remove the rocker shafts so that you can safely remove, that's a lot of safelies. So that you can safely remove.
We're all about safety.
Yeah. You want to loosen up the eccentrics so that you can remove the rocker shafts, safely removing the rocker arms. Because that is the most important thing, because you don't want to score the inside of those arms. You don't want to score the inside of these journals either. So just take all the precautions, make sure everything's nice and loose. And if need be, you can spray some silicone or put oil over the valve train as you're doing it to just minimize the wear. No matter what, you're gonna have some wear, so it's not the end of the world if you see a little bit of aluminum flaking off here and there. Just try to minimize it. All right, so this is exactly why you want to be able to move the cam.
Because it's not top dead center.
Not exactly, but because you have a lobe here that is supplying pressure to the rocker arm, this will not let you remove it without hearing a big pop, because it's going to slide off and it'll just slam into the cam. So if you look closely here, that's why I put the ratchet, right? So we can move over here, move the cam so that it's at a closed position, right? And now there is slack, so now we can move the rocker over and remove the spring or the retainer. Keep track of where those go. I'm gonna collect them at the end of this, so that way, you know, we have all of them to put back when we're done. So at this point, most of these, if not all of them, are ready to pop out. And this side is ready to pop out. So let's get our drift so that we can push these out. So on this specific M30 head, we have pipe plugs that are fastened in the middle of the rocker shaft. You know, there's a lot of speculation on why they do this. For me, there's oil running through the rocker shaft, so it's just to prevent oil from coming out, in my opinion. This could also be a way to fasten the rocker shaft into this journal so that it doesn't move. But that doesn't really make much sense, because the head bolts themselves actually secure the rocker shaft from moving. So it's up to anyone's opinion. Maybe a BMW expert can chime in the comments below. Let us know why they use this. I've heard them using blank plugs. So what we're gonna do is just remove them. So the way to do this safely is to use one of your used head bolts. And let me go grab one so I can show you. So when you use one of your used head bolts, it slides in there, right? There's a notch that is right next to the rocker shaft. You can't really see it through here, but it's in there. And I'm just gonna use this first one because it's the most prominent. And that's gonna allow you to undo this without it spinning. There you have it.
Time to lose a small object. Right?
Yeah, now make sure you throw this across the room so that you never see it again. Just kidding, put it somewhere safe. I have a nice little pile of parts right here. May not be the most organized, but I can see them and I know where they are. So now do it to the other side. There's 4 in total, so 2 on each side. So on the back here, we have the retainer plate. This doesn't allow any oil to leak out, because just like the front, there's no real seals. The front isn't sealed because the timing cover is in there, and it'll just allow the oil to spill over back into the pan. Can't happen back here, so you have a plate. Pretty clean job. I would have done the same thing. There's a little bit RTV with the gasket on there. I've seen some that are just full of RTV. Don't do that. Use a gasket. So you see the same plugs that we had in front. Let's remove those. Right. At this point, we're going to make sure that all of our retainer springs, I guess you can call them, are removed before we start punching out the rocker shaft. I'm just letting these sit at the bottom. Just don't forget them there when you're ready to move on. This is a homemade punch or drift that fits perfectly in there. So this is, I would recommend making something like this, or you can find something that won't mar, you know, that's kind of got a blunt edge to it. We welded a nut on there and kind of rounded off the edge to make sure that it doesn't damage any of the journals going in. But the softer the better. If you can figure something out that won't damage at all, that'd be great. Why don't you drop it down in the comments below? I'll buy one, you know. But I've had a lot of success with M20 heads, with now M30 heads doing this. So do this part at your own risk, because if you damage your head, it can cost you your entire head. So just be cautious, make the right decisions on what to use. Don't use an extension, because the square part of an extension will mushroom that end. So you want to make sure that it doesn't hit the threads where this pipe plug lands. Because if you go in there and hit it with an extension, you're going to mushroom the head of it, and guess what? You won't be able to put this pipe plug back in, and you've got yourself a ruined rocker shaft. So let's not do that. It's exactly why we're using this. In fact, I'm going to round this off a little more just to make sure that we have a nice smooth edge to put in there. Nice and rounded out. Clean it up. Seems round, right? That should do it.
So why does it have to be hollow?
Why does this have to be hollow? It's just a coincidence because it's a nut. Yeah. The main thing that you want to be concerned about this is the diameter, because the diameter of this has to be slightly bigger than the race, or I guess the outer edge of the rocker shaft. Like I said, you don't want to damage it. Before I forget, let's add some oil, because more oil, more lubrication, so you don't damage anything. We are ready to start driving it out. Periodically check on the progress. You don't want to start damaging something and be too late to save it. So just stop, take a look at what's going on, and then continue. It's good to go. Make sure it doesn't land on the ground. Our table saved it. These are in two halves.
My head saved it.
Yeah. They're in two halves. So the first half will come out. You can mark them if you want, but it's kind of self-explanatory where they go because of the notches. These are the notches that catch the cylinder head bolts. So the end is threaded, right? So you know that this side is the pipe plug and the notch is facing you. So that means it's the bottom left rocker shaft. So just follow that pattern. You'll kind of figure out where they go. If not, just mark them. It's easier. I know where they go, but that makes it easier for you. So let's continue driving it out. Now's a good time to start pulling the parts out. So you can kind of just pull the spring. There's a washer, and there's a much thicker washer that fell in here. And this is your assembly for each valve. Thin washer, thick washer, spring, rocker arm, and the retainer spring. So while you're in there, grab all your retainer springs. We're gonna collect these and then fast forward to the next part, or even after we remove the second rocker shaft arms. It's the same process, so I'm sure you guys wanna jump to the good stuff and removing the valves. All right guys, there you have it. Both sides of the, valve train have been removed. Rocker shafts on this side, rocker shafts on this side. I have them sitting under the head right here, just separate sides for separate sides on the valve train. Make sure everything's organized. We use a magnet just to organize the rocker arms. I feel like this is the best way to do it. Just don't lose the entire magnet, because then you lose all the rocker arms. So we have our stuff here, right? Springs, washers, count them, make sure they don't go anywhere, grow legs and run off. So now at this point, we are ready to remove the cam. There's nothing holding it back. We've removed everything from the sides, and here we go. Just guide it out, nice and easy. If you guys ever broken a cam before, you know that it's very easy to break them. And voila, your cam is removed.
You want to say something about like inspecting it?
Yeah. So in general, these journals on the cam should be smooth. When you start seeing striations, such as these, you should start to get at least a little concerned, because if you run your nail over it, you shouldn't feel any ridges. And on this one, I can honestly tell you that there's a little bit of ridging happening, and that's just wear. That's wear due to dirt getting into the oil and circulating through the journals and causing those, causing the scoring. So at this point, I'm gonna actually swap this cam out, and I'm gonna tell you why. This whole project was sparked out of me getting an E12, doing a head swap on it because one of the rocker arms broke, and I thought they just broke under normal circumstances. So let me show you the head. So when I took it apart, I noticed of course the rocker arm was broken. So I said, hey, let's just refresh the head, right? Let's take it all apart. So I removed everything, and this is what we found. So the rocker arm was on cylinder number 1, and as you can see here, I'm gonna use an old valve to show you. This valve, guess what? It's bent. It does not want to come out. And I mean, there's no other explanation other than somebody doing I guess a head rebuild and not knowing how to time the engine properly. So what ended up happening is they cranked it over, started it, and guess what? The valve met the top of the piston. So that's where I ended up with this. Nobody told me that, and it's nobody else's fault. Honestly, you live with the deals that you get, right? So the E12 was a great deal, and now I have to live with swapping the head out and using a later B34 head. The only difference, though, this is why I bring up the cam. Let me pull it out so I can show you. So, an E12 M30 is powered by a distributor cap. The old style though. I know that on the 80s era BMWs, they were using distributor caps with a rotor that was running off the end of the cam, such as this. On the flange, or more on the gear, I would say, there would be a rotor, and that rotor spins around the cap. So that's the newer style, the 80s era. So in the late 70s, with the E12, this is chipped, but you can see that it has a key. So in this key would fit a rod, or a rod with a gear at the end. And that gear would drive the distributor cap. And it's an older style cap, but it's the same cam profile. So in this case, we got very lucky because this head is a good head. That is a bad head because of the valve, and this cam is actually in just as good, if not better condition than our old cam. So it's a win-win. Luckily, my brother and I love to collect heads, even if they're broken.
Insert joke here.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's M50 heads just about everywhere in the shop. There's one there, there's 3 outside that we were trying to harvest parts from. There's about 4 different engines just sitting right there. And I don't know, call us crazy. If you guys have the same illness that we do, then leave a comment down below and say hallelujah. So we'll move on. And this is the cam we're using for this project. And just so you know that they are different. So if you plan on using newer heads with an older M30, just know that that is how they're powered, and you will have to substitute the cam. So it works out. So to top things off with this video, I want to end it with removing these valves. So these valves are not very difficult to remove because they're a softer spring, but I gotta tell you that you have to absolutely use a C-clamp style valve compressor tool. And these tools are actually available on eBay for pretty cheap. I think they've seen them from anywhere from $30 to maybe $60, but they're very, very inexpensive, at least compared to an OEM tool that you can probably spend hundreds of dollars on. You don't need to go all fancy. Let me show you what we use all the time. And this works on an M20 and it works on an M30. Anything with that weird over valve, even this M62, even with the hydraulic lifters, it's a overhead style valve, so you have to use a C-clamp style valve compressor. And it looks like this. So we use the biggest cup that's available in the kit and the medium cup. Quite simply, get the spacing right, slip it over the top, make sure the bottom cup meets the bottom of the valve. You center it well, make sure it doesn't slip and slide around. Once it catches, you just compress it down. It is a hand crank style, so you'll be here for a little bit, but it's not a big deal. Everything takes time. Once it's compressed enough, you can see from the very top that you now have your keepers that are ready to be taken out. I need a magnet. Grab a magnet. So these keepers are magnetic, luckily, so just one at a time, take them out. Once you have them out, put them in your magnetic tray. Undo the C-clamp. Move it to the side and remove it. And there you have your spring, your retainer, your top retainer, and your valve should just glide right out. There you have it. This is a dirty head, so we're gonna give these a really good cleaning. Once you have your safeties on, let's get it going. You're gonna hold on to it tight. If you've never done this, be very careful. I like to start with the bottom. Get all the soot off. There you go, see? Nice and clean. Much better. So with the side, it's a little more time consuming. Be careful. That almost looks brand new, and we haven't even lapped them yet. This is actually a really healthy valve because if you look at the band right here, there's hardly, I don't even think there's any pitting at all. It's really good. This is really good. So really good sign, really nice valve. We're gonna go ahead and remove the rest of them. It's the same process all across. I'm sure you guys don't want to see 12 of the same thing. We'll just skip forward to a fully disassembled M30 head. All right guys, so we're at the point where everything has been removed from the head. If you've been following along with this process, you see that it's very simple. It's just a series of steps that, just take a little time to do. There's nothing really complex about it. So this very, very last step is removing the valve stem seals. These are very simple. You use a tool just like this. Again, cheap eBay tool, I think, what, 20 bucks? About 20 bucks. It has grooves on the inside to catch the edge of the valve stem seal. So you just simply go from overhead just like this. Go as low as you can to get that ridge on the valve stem seal. And I like to start with like a twist to try to get it loose. It might fight you, but you can start to see it move. And you're not reusing these, so don't be afraid to rough them up a little bit. There we go. They're gonna put up a fight if they're really old, but this is what they look like. And that's what the valve guide looks like when you remove it. So repeat 12 times and you got yourself a completely disassembled head. Make sure you get one of those master packs of to reseal it, all the gaskets that go along with it, because you're gonna want to use brand new stuff. You want to clean this up real nice to make sure all the surfaces are nice and clean so you get really good sealing. And have fun when you reassemble it. Honestly, it's everything in reverse. If you guys have any questions at all, drop a comment down below. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.